Orin, though, I wanted to thank Marlene Copeland-Dodinovo, the executive director of the Chicago office of the Jewish National Fund, because she introduced us to Orin. So thank you, Marlene.
My pleasure.
Orin.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Shalom.
Hello, welcome.
Boker Tov.
Thank you, Boker Tov. For I'm talking. It's really morning because I'm talking from California, so it's 7:30, and it's very nice to see all of you. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about, and it actually fits because last week was Earth Day, so we're going to talk about some different aspects from Israel, about water, about agriculture. And since we are not a very large group here, so feel free to ask questions or chat or use the chat. Alan will help me with that. Let's start. I will share my screen, and I have some videos along with the presentation. So if something is not working, please let me know. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Great, great. So a little bit about myself just before we start. I'm 44, I'm married to Hila, and I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And what I did all my life, actually, I served in the Israeli Air Force for 24 years. I'm a helicopter pilot.
Oh, hey, that's news.
And
Yeah.
I'll let you mute
You need to mute somebody.
background noises. And I retired 2 years ago.
Orin, you have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Great. So I retired 2 years ago from the Israeli Air Force, and I arrived here in California late 2019. And as it said before, I'm the Israeli emissary here in Northern California. Probably will go back to Israel this summer, but that's for now. We live in Sunnyvale. As you can imagine, being an Air Force pilot in Israel and then moving into a non-profit organization in the US, the Jewish National Fund, it's not very common. It's not the common path for an Israeli pilot. So I will share my story in 2 minutes, what happened and how it happened. So in my last position as a deputy commander of an Air Force base in Palmachim, I have a sense that most of you have been to Israel and knows Israel. Palmachim is an Air Force base located very close to Tel Aviv and Rishon LeZion. I was the deputy commander, and I adopted a program called Special in Uniform that we had in the base. The program helps young kids to draft and volunteer and actually draft to the army. You know, in Israel, everyone serves in the army, and the program helps them to fulfill their dream to serve alongside their friends. It wasn't like that till 2013. The army didn't accept them, and that's what the program does. And I liked it very much. I adopted them. I helped them renovate the building so they can walk in the base. And that's how I found out about JNF. The program is actually a triple win in Israel, because it's not only helping them to get drafted into the army, it helps the families that can go to work and not stay at home all day long, take care of their child. And it also helps the Israeli society, because young kids, young youth, boys and girls get to know the world of special needs, you know, from a first experience. They serve along each other, they take care of them, and it's really amazing to see the change that I call it, I don't know if to call it the regular soldiers, but how they get to know the world of special needs, and it's really exciting. By the way, it's a very, very successful program. The US saw that, as to copy it to United States, and now they started the program by the name of Corps of Honor in the National Guard in September or October to 2020. And after I saw that and met JNF and their CEO, Russell Robinson, that came to the base, he asked me to join them for a week to see what they're doing in Israel, and I did. I took some days off and wandered with them all over Israel. And after I saw what they're doing in Israel, I decided that's the best thing for me to do. And this is a very short version of how I got to work for JNF. I guess you know JNF in Israel, but most of the people that I had a talk with in California, specifically, they are connecting JNF with Keren Kayemet Israel and only with trees, and that's it's really not the case. I hope you're aware of that. JNF and Keren Kayemet Israel are two different organizations, and JNF is a non-political and non-profit organization, and the main target for the main goals for the Jewish National Fund USA is first to help people move to the south and the north of Israel, out of the busy and crowded center, and expensive, by the way. And the second thing is to maintain and make it better, the connection for the next generation with Israel. So we have a high school in Israel, in Hod HaSharon, in the center, which brings more than 1,000 students a year to do a semester or mini semester in Israel. And it's such a successful place that we are building another high school in Be'er Sheva. So that's about the Jewish National Fund, and I can tell you some more later if you want to. But let's move to the main subject. Usually when we talk about Israel, we talk about a few things. We talk about the Israeli-Palestinian thing that we have along the years. We are talking about Israel as a high-tech leader in the world. And now we are talking about Israel as the first country to be vaccinated and get out of this crisis. But today I want to talk about how Israel is in the front of agriculture and water, and explore a little bit about how we became, as you know, 62% of Israel is a desert. So how a small country, which has Arab countries all over Israel, all the neighbors, how we became such leaders in water and in agriculture, with not the best terms and climate condition. So some facts about trees. JNF and in Israel, we planted over 265 million trees since 48, and it's actually the only country that entered the new millennium with more trees than it had before. All the other countries are cutting trees. We are planting trees since 1948 and even before that. I want to talk to you about water, because it's, when Moses hit the rock and water went out, you can't really depend on that again, even though people in Israel consider to be Moses from time to time. But we had to build something a little bit more consistent. And I'll start with what happened in the world with water. In the 20th century, the world population tripled. What happened with water, the use of water grew up 6 times more, and it's something that will stay with us. The quality of life is improving. People are building pools and bigger houses and gardens and parks, and we'll need more and more water in the world. the demographic in the world by the end of this century, we're going to be 10 billion people on the planet. In 2016, we were 8. So it's 20% increase in demographic. If you take a look in the Middle East map and Israel, what you can see is that Israel, as I said, 62% of it is a desert. Egypt is mostly a desert. Jordan has no water too. Syria and Lebanon has a little bit more water, but the whole area is craving for water, and it's not, and it's a part of it can cause also, as you know, for security and political issues. In Israel, what happened in Israel since 1948? So the population grew up by 14. We were around 600 or 700,000 people back then in 48, and now we are 9.2 million. And we will grow by 2050, we will go to 16 million. We are now supplying water in Israel to 12 million people. We are supplying water for another 2 million in the Gaza Strip and almost another 2 million in the West Bank. So actually, even though we are 9.2 million, we are supplying water for 12 million people. And all of that with less rain that we had in the 40s or the 50s, around 40 to 50% less water than we had back then. What happened? How we build the roadmap? So it actually started since from the early 30s when the British published the White Book and told the British government that Israel can bring more immigrants inside because they have no water to supply them. They have no water resources, and Ben Gurion and his team, they understood that they had to create a water plan that will convince the other countries that Israel can supply water, and they started building a fantasy water plan that started from drilling wells in the south of Israel, then creating a big facility in the center of Israel to reuse water, and then build a pipeline going all the way from the north and the Kinneret all the way to the south and the desert and the Negev, and also to the east in Jerusalem. And back then it was almost imaginary, but it did work, and it convinced the other countries that we have a plan, and we started building the pipelines and the wells since the early 40s. So when I mention here smart governments, it's actually a vision that was created back then. We had no choice, by the way. With water, the same thing as agriculture. We'll see it in a few minutes, but we had no choice because we are all surrounded by Arab countries, and we know that if we won't be able to supply our own water and food, someone will take advantage of it at one point or another. But the government decided a very long time ago to invest in water and research of water and food. This thing led to robust use of technology. So as you know, Israel is now leading the world with a few more countries using technology in every aspect of life. The national focus on education about not wasting water is something that we had since, again, the establishment of the country. As a child, I remember that my parents told me that I shouldn't waste water almost every day. When we got up in the morning, we looked at the news to see what's going on with the Kinneret, what's the level of the water, because it was such a drama, it was such an important thing that even in schools, we educate kids not to waste water. And it's something that every Israeli kid grow up with. The safe reuse of treated sewage for agriculture irrigation, you will see it in a minute, but 85, almost 90% of the water that we use for agriculture, and by the way, when I talk about agriculture, all the countries in the world, 60 to 70% of the water that are using, it's going to agriculture. The rest of it going to the houses and everything else, but 60% is going to agriculture. And we had to find a way to use, to reuse water with our agriculture, because we know that we have, we don't have enough water, but we have to create and grow our own food. So we are actually reusing over 85% of the sewage water in Israel for agriculture. You can see it, the differences between Israel and the rest of the world. The second country in the world is Spain with almost 20%. But you can see Australia, Italy, Central Europe. By the way, the US is not, I think it's less than 5%. Okay, it's very, they are very, very behind. There are countries, there are states that they are doing better, but I don't see, for example, in California, I think that in 8 to 10 years, there will be a big crisis here, because they are not doing it fast enough, and there are reasons for that also. I'll just mention two of those and compare it to Israel. In Israel, two things. One is if you buy a property and you have a water resource in your property, it belongs to the government. It's not like that in the US. It's becoming private. And the second thing, in Israel, you pay a lot for water, and all the money goes to treat water and not to other places. And the government responsible about it. We have a special unit or department that responsible, and it's not political. In the U.S., the governors are responsible for the water in their states, in the territory. And since the system here are very old, you need to invest quite some of money to replace it. And in order to do that, I guess you have to raise taxes, and no one wants to do that if he wants to get elected again. And this is the reason that in a lot of states in the US, the system, the pipes and everything else is almost 100 years old. So those are just two facts about why is there a big difference between those the countries. But it all starts, by the way, I think it all starts because Israel didn't have any other option. And the water map, how it was achieved, how in 2013, the Israeli government had a statement, made a statement, sorry, that Israel is not longer depending on the weather. We don't need the rain anymore to be able to supply water for houses and agriculture. And how we did that, part of it is smart agriculture policy using drip irrigation. You'll see a video in a few seconds, but agriculture in Israel is like a lab, is like a surgery. It's very, very precise, and we are not wasting water at all. Desalination. So almost 100%, now it's 100% of water in Israeli homes comes from desalination facilities. We have 5 of those during the coast of the shore of Israel, and we are building 2 more, one in the north in Akko and one in the center next to Yavne. And we actually are not pumping water out of the Kinneret for the past few years now. It's only for emergency. And we're not pumping from groundwater also. So we give those years for those resources to fill up again. And it's very important because we know that sometimes our friends around the world, our neighbors mostly, will try to hit our desalination plants. And it's something that we have to take under consideration. But Israel is now not pumping water out of the ground. The pricing in Israel is water is expensive, and you pay for the water that you use. And as I said before, the money goes to treat the water facilities to keep them modern and advanced. 100% of the water fees, like I said, goes to that. I want to show you a short video clip that will summarize the subject, the water subject, and you will see most of the things that I tell you about are from Seth Siegel. He's an author of 2 books about water. One is Let It Be Water, about Israel water, and the second one is Troubled Water, about water in the US and what the US has to do in order to be prepared and not get into a water crisis. So let me show my video.
Water scarcity is a growing problem.
Cape Town could become the first major city in the world to run out of water.
A combination of overcrowding, pollution, poor resource management and climate change will bring major security threats.
Water really kind of underpins everything.
Entrepreneur Seth Siegel is the author of Let There Be Water. So you say that the solution is found in innovation in Israel.
Well, as I began looking around at the issue of water scarcity, what I found most remarkable was the fact that the answer to nearly every question was either invented in Israel or was one in which Israel had played a leading part. The early Zionists, the reason why they wanted to be here and only here was because of the biblical connection. The Bible is a water-suffused document. And so therefore the Zionists, whether they were religious or not religious, it baked into this the fact that they were respecting of water in the region. When the first round of pioneers came, it was a very dry, dusty place. If they are going to be true to the Zionist dream, the idea of Jews from all over the world coming back to the land of Israel, there wouldn't be enough water for everybody. So they began very aggressively thinking about water. And it's these very ideas that are the basis for what they are doing now and what I believe will migrate to the rest of a very dry world. Israel succeeded in water not because of one thing that it did right, but because it did many things right. Israel developed a water-revering culture. Israeli school children are educated how they should be using water, how they should be conserving water. And when you learn something when you're 3 and 4 and 5 years old, it's a pretty good chance that it will stay with you the rest of your life. It's developed the very best infrastructure possible. Pipes get fixed even before they break here because they've developed predictive algorithms that tell you when a pipe may be breaking. Israel is the only place in this region and among the very few places in the entire world where water is charged at its full and absolute price. Because Israelis pay the full price for their water, wasting water is the same as wasting money. There's not a single field that has used flood irrigation in Israel since the early 1970s. 75% of all fields in Israel use drip irrigation. With drip irrigation, tiny drippers feed droplets of water to the plants at their roots, and just about nothing is lost to evaporation. In 1952, leaders made a far-reaching decision to pursue a brand new source of water. They decided to capture all of the country's sewage, to treat it to a very high level where you actually could drink it if you had to drink it, and to use all of it for agriculture. And today, nearly 90% of the country's wastewater is used on farms all around the country through pipes that are specially laid just for this purpose. And JNF donors all around the world gave funds to build several hundred reservoirs all over Israel to hold this treated high-quality wastewater until the farmers need it. Without that contribution, Israel would never have been able to come to where they are today. Only 1/3 of Israel's water comes from a river, a lake, or an aquifer. All the rest of it comes from sources like desalination. Approximately 80% of the household water used in Israel could be said to be derived from Israel's Mediterranean desalination plants. The world's largest and most energy efficient and most productive desalination plant is located here in Israel. So what Israelis have now is the best of all worlds. In rainy times, they can make more use of natural water. In times when there's scarcity of rain, they can make more use of artificial or manufactured sources. So that way, there will be enough water for what they need. Whether a rich country or a poor country, a large country, a small country, a landlocked country, or a country with a long sea coast, every country has something to learn from the journey that Israelis have gone through over the last maybe nearly 100 years in getting smart about how to manage water in a dry region.
So, sorry for that. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that we did. It's not only one thing, but it all started with, first, we didn't have any other option. And second, the government in the 40s that decided that we are going to invest in water. And we had some couple of very hard years if you're talking about budget and economics. And we had some wars, but we knew that water is the base for everything. We have to be not depending not on weather, and of course not on our other countries surrounding us. And as you can see, JNF has been doing a lot of work in this field since it was established many years ago. But mostly we are doing water reservoirs that allow agriculture in the southern part and the northern part of Israel, and the rehabilitation of dried river that can pollute groundwater. A lot about education with kids, some drilling of water, and supporting R&D in those fields. And it doesn't stop that there. The fact that Israel is now independent with water doesn't stop entrepreneurs to create more companies that are and organizations that are dealing with water. One of them, called WaterGen, it's a company that invented a device that actually creates water out of the humidity in the air. So it pulls up, sucks the air with humidity and turns it into water. And you will see it in another video in a few minutes. But we'll keep being more and more efficient about water. A lot of times I get asked about how much energy is involved in those desalination facilities that we have. So I'll just say that we are also using solar panels, and we are trying to do the main work of the facilities to suck the water during the hours that there's not a lot of demand for energy in Israel. So we are trying to predict where are the holes where we can do that, and the facilities are working that time of day. So that's about water. And now you can see this is Beersheba. Beersheba 20 years ago was almost a development city with no water, with no parks, and it has changed completely in the next 2 decades since JNF started to be involved and put a lot of money into the city. And it's really the capital of the desert. This is the new lake that we built with Beersheba city. And it's 95% reused water. The water that is in the lake, we are going to build all over it a park. And by the way, our most advanced and huge project, the new Zionist village on 20 acres of land in the Be'er Sheva, will be ready in 5 years. That's something that if we have time, we'll see a short video about that also. So I want to move from water to agriculture, but it's actually very similar. First of all, we didn't have any option. We can't depend on food from other countries. We can use it, but we can't. We have to be independent about food. Take all the things that I told you about creativity in water, bring it together with all the high tech that we do in Israel, and you get the result of agrotech and high tech agriculture, and the most efficient way to grow crops and fruits and vegetables in the world. When you talk about farmers now in Israel, you can talk about entrepreneurs and high-tech people. It's not farmers like we used to talk about, I don't know, 10 or 20 years ago. They are very, very creative, very efficient. You will see most of the things are growing up vertically and not on the ground, because when you grow something on the ground, the roots are going very widely. You have to use a lot of water to do that. And when you take it vertically, you can do it with small amount of water, very, very precise. We are using drones. We are using computers. We are using sensors that live on the plant and measure exactly what the plant needs to grow. And I don't know if you had a chance to visit in the southern part of Israel, in the Arava, that we are going to talk about in a few seconds, but you will be amazed to see what you can grow up in the desert. And I mean everything. You will see watermelons and cucumbers and pineapples, and they are growing on sand dunes. So let's see a short video about the advanced agriculture in Israel. In the end, I'm going to talk to you about what we do with this, not only in Israel, but for Tikkun Olam around the world.
When you think agriculture, think Israel. Israel is a world leader in agriculture. Advanced technologies developed by Israeli scientists, along with the vast knowledge accumulated, are distributed statewide and exported to many countries that rely on Israeli agriculture expertise for their agricultural production. Breakthrough Israeli research and development provides solutions for complicated agricultural day-to-day challenges worldwide. Israel's geographical structure is diverse, and the soil and climatic conditions are mostly harsh. This led to the amassing of expertise and experience in agriculture in challenging areas with unique characteristics. Breakthrough discoveries have been made in this area. With desertification on the rise globally and water sources shrinking constantly, our farmers and researchers work to develop innovative solutions that are efficient and environmentally friendly. Israel is considered a leading pioneer in water and irrigation technologies. Dozens of technologies have been developed in Israel in this field, from water purification to water recycling and irrigation with treated wastewater, all of which enable efficient agricultural production. Drip irrigation, the most efficient irrigation method on Earth, was developed in Israel. Volcani Center researchers have developed systems which provide climate monitoring and control in greenhouses, namely temperature, humidity, and ventilation control. For a plant to grow and produce, it needs ideal conditions that aren't necessarily provided by nature or in its growing habitat. Welcome to the future of agriculture. Our advanced systems developed in Israel enable us to map and analyze crops and accurately observe and measure all parameters necessary for an ideal habitat for the plant while maximizing resource utilization. After a fruit or vegetable has been picked, It's the post-harvest period in which fruit quality gradually degrades, in many cases leading to an increasing amount of produce losses, resulting in massive financial losses. Our scientists have developed advanced means and methods to extend the shelf life of fruit without affecting taste or aroma. Research and development in labs across the country, predominantly Volcani Center, led to the development of high-yield varieties more resistant to adverse climate conditions, pests, and diseases. They are more aromatic and contain higher nutritional values.
Okay, so as you can see, I don't see the chat, so if someone has a question that you want to ask now, you can do that. But as you can see, it's not only about irrigation or about a specific point in agriculture. It's all over. It's from the start. It's from treating the land and then irrigation and then taking care of the fruit and make it better, make it more nutritious to people and more efficient, and how we grow more food. So you take the Israeli mind that also all the time we're trying to create things and invent things and put it into agriculture, and you get the most delicious cherry tomatoes that you can think about, and it's all growing out in a country that 60% of it is actually desert. And I want to take you for our second part about Tikkun Olam and agriculture, and take you to a part in Israel called Arava. Arava, actually, you will see it making the world a better place. But where is Arava? Arava is 70 kilometers. This place in the southeast of Israel, alongside the Jordanian border, and it's very close to Eilat. It's in the middle of the way between Be'er Sheva and Eilat. It's 6% of the land of Israel, not very populated, and we had some pioneers that moved there in the late 50s, and they started to. First of all, it was important for the Israeli government that people will settle there because of the Jordanian border, but they found a way to create agriculture there also. We are talking about 4,000 to 5,000 residents in some 7 communities, 600 family farms that actually produces 50% of Israel fresh vegetables exports. Okay, and we are talking about a place that you have no rain during the year, almost nothing. As you can see in the picture, it's all sand. It's all sand, but with what we said about water and precise agriculture, they became a world leader in advanced arid agriculture, and many countries are coming to learn from the Arava Institute what we are doing and how we are doing that in Israel. As Shimon Peres once said, the Moshavim in the south became an incubator, and a farmer is a scientist. He's not a farmer anymore, because if you want to grow things on sand dunes, you have to be very, very creative and brave to try to do that. And it's really amazing to see what we've done in this field. You can see here in the left picture, you can see the melons here, and again growing up high in the air, not on the ground. Okay, they are doing that in the same height that people can pick it up, not too high and not too low. You don't have to waste a lot of water to irrigate those plants. And you have no bugs or no, I don't know how you call it, lizards and everything else that affects the fruit. And we actually grow it up in the air, and with almost no water. It's very, very efficient. And the farmers that we have in the Arava, they are young families, and that's what they do. They are really pioneers in that field. You can see here that we are investing a lot in researchers, in labs, in the field, in the south, to keep being more and more efficient about using water, but how to create a better nutrition in the food that we're growing. So we actually, it's a process between the desert, desertification process to be able to be sustainable, to do sustainable agriculture. But now we are doing this for food safety, but not only in Israel, but all over the world. You can see the grapes here. You can see the cherry tomatoes also up in the air. And you have to see it with your own eyes. It's crazy. The world is, it's pretty obvious that the world is becoming more and more desert-like. Each year we have less and less water, and that's the reason that many countries need to do something now to be prepared for that in the future. And that is why Israel is helping a lot of countries to do so and share the knowledge about water and agriculture. Because every year 20 million hectares of fertile land is becoming a desert. And that's not, it's something that is going to last. It's not going to stop, unfortunately. And 85% of the people live in developing countries where children are the most affected from this lack of food, lack of fresh vegetables, lack of water. I want to tell you about two institutes that we have in the Arava. One is called ACAT, Arava International Center for Agriculture Training. And we believe that if you give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, it's not enough. You have to teach him how to fish, and then he will be able to maintain and live by himself. And that's what we do in ACAT. ACAT was created almost 30 years ago, and the idea was to bring knowledge and bring our knowledge that we are using water and agriculture to other countries. And now we have more than 10,000 students annually and more than 20,000 graduates from countries that Israel doesn't have even diplomatic relationship with. We are talking about those countries that you can see: Nigeria and Cambodia, Indonesia, Rwanda, Ethiopia. And those countries, they are not, they have rain, they have water, but they don't know what to do with that. They don't have the knowledge, they have the people. And what we are doing is taking them from traditional thinking, from being farmers, putting, like you see in the picture, taking the water on their back, to think outside of the box, to be entrepreneurs, to know how to create water irrigation more efficiently, and then they'll have more food in their villages, in their towns, and those people that are coming to the Arava, to the desert in Israel, going back to their countries, becoming our best ambassadors, by the way, but they are leading the world because their countries, because what they need most of all is food and water, like Israel back in the 40s. Not only that, when you talk to them, they will tell you that it's not only the food and the water that they see in Israel. They come to Israel and they see that in the middle of the desert, there's communities that live with pools and clubs and life, and they want to create the same thing in their countries. So it's a win-win situation, and we invest a lot of money through the JNF in those places because we think it's very, very important. It's Tikkun Olam. It's the most, I don't know if it's the most Tikkun Olam that I can think about. And you will hear something from one of the students. It helps develop the Arava, of course, because they are working in the field. We're taking them to class only 1 day a week or 2 days, but they actually work in the field, and they get to learn about what we do in Israel, about the politics in Israel, about the Israeli holidays. So they are our best ambassadors in those countries. And I believe that in few years, we'll see more and more countries creating diplomatic relationship with Israel. This is some of the picture. You see they are working with pipelines in Israel, learning the most advanced technology, how to fix it, how to build it. And I want to show you a short video clip of one of the alumni from this project.
Shalom, my name is Tara. I come from
Kenya. My name is Tira. I'm from Cambodia.
Shalom, Namaste. It's me Vinod from Nepal.
Sawadee Shalom, my name is Nitaya Sinyen. I'm from Thailand.
Hi, my name is Graham Wangi. I'm from Kenya. Peace.
Hi, my name is Menawati Tabalian and I'm from Indonesia. This is my second year to stay in Israel. And I got the money from the Nidian Foundation to support a business, a dream that I want to do when I go back to Indonesia. So the idea is coming from because I live in a village, which is we have a natural pond, but farmers in my village don't use the pond to grow in dry season. They only use it for growing rice, and it's only once a year and only for family needs. They don't sell it, so it means they don't get any money from that. And the idea is I want to show the farmer and to teach them slowly how to use the water so we can grow crops in dry season and in rainy season. ICAT has given me a lot of experience and eager to do something better, to do something different. And I have a lot of experience and confidence when I go back there, and I will prove the people around me in my community that a woman can do better, and a woman can influence people to do something better in agriculture. And I want to influence my community and to teach them by showing them how technology and science will help them in agriculture.
I want to move forward and tell you about the last thing because we're running out of time. We have another institute called the Machon Arava, the Arava Institute, and then we're doing a lot of similar things, but this institute brings Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israeli young students from universities to talk about climate changes and climate challenges in the area. And the idea is to not to go and deal with the crisis that we have with our neighbors politically, but to do it through joint problems that we have and trying to solve them together. So it's Jordanian and Palestinians and Israeli together. And this facility is the one that arranged two of the water gen that I told you about earlier, the devices that create water out of the air, and they were able, in the support of the EU, the European countries, to bring two of those machines to Gaza Strip in 2019 to the hospitals to help them with the water crisis. And they have a lot of achievements creating bridges between Jordan and Israel and the Palestinians. By the way, Jordan, if you are not aware, Israel supports Jordan with 50 million cubes of water each year. And we are also helping them build a desalination facility in Acaba, not very far from Eilat, to help them with their water issues because they have water issues. And I won't show you the video clip because we don't have a lot of time, but it all sums up when you want to build a new community like we did in Chalutza. It's an area, I'll just say one more thing. We are doing all of that. We saw the special uniform program that I came from, but we are doing all of that with, and we're not leaving anyone behind. We support a lot of disability organizations. One of them is LOTEM, which is an organization that making nature accessible for people with disabilities. Because in Israel, it's not Yosemite Park or the Bryce Canyon. We have a small country, and we want all the people to get the chance, and all the students to get a chance to be in nature. And LOTEM is a wonderful organization, and we support it every year. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is, even here, you see the green heart. There's also all sand. It's all this area is sand dunes, and we started building a new community called Chalutza. Chalutz in Hebrew, it's in English, it's pioneer. And if you get a visit, if you get a chance to visit in Israel, you must go and see what's going on over there, because we have brought all the stuff that we invented with water and agriculture, and now the place when it used to be sand dunes is flourishing and thriving, and it's incredible to see. I just want to leave enough time for questions. This is part of the pictures from Chalutza, from the sand dunes, and that's how miracles are being established, or being done in Israel. I want to stop sharing because we don't have a lot of time, and if you have some questions, I'm here to answer it, or try to answer it as good as I can.
Orin, I'll ask a question. Is there any effort being made to establish relationships around water resources with the 4 countries, Bahrain, Sudan, UAE, Morocco, who just recently established relationships with Israel?
Not only that, but I will tell you that part of the reasons that those countries are signed those agreements, because they know they have to bring the knowledge that we have in Israel with water and food to their countries. So it's not the main reason, but it's definitely part of the reason. In Israel, we don't think that water is something that you can hide from others. It doesn't matter if they are friends or enemies, it's the basics. So we share the knowledge with everyone about water and about irrigation. And to answer your question, I think that not only that, but more countries will sign with Israel, because they know they have to do something with water and food. We are going, it's very obvious where we are going. In 10 or to 15 years, we will have less rain than we have now. With everything going on with the climate, those countries have to do a lot of things right now to be prepared for that. So we do share a lot of this knowledge. Yeah, Richard.
How many people?
Yourself.
Yeah, how many people are employed in the agricultural realm?
Well,
how many people are employed and earn an income from the agricultural division of Israel's economy?
Wow, that's a good question. All over the country, I believe it's about directly from agriculture, it's about 20%. But if you take all this, we have a lot of startups and technology company. Even now, friends of mine are moving their company from Israel to California. They are turning tractors to autonomic vehicles, and they will move now to California. And so I don't know if you call it salary from agriculture, but they are doing agriculture, and they are using drones to maintain fields in Brazil, in the US, in Israel. So we have a lot of companies that you will see that are tech companies, but they are involving with agriculture.
Thank you.
This is Mark. I have 2 quick questions.
Mark, hold on just a second. Tikkun was called on. I just want to get to him, and then Mark,
thank you.
go next.
Yeah, I had a question. When you, I mean, you've done remarkably with desalination. When you take the minerals out of the salt water, what happens to those, and what do you do with those byproducts?
So the salt is going back to the sea. There is a part of between 5 to 7% that you have to spread again into back into the sea, but we do it very far away, so it won't affect the surrounding of the creatures that you have in the sea, and you use the rest of it as water for drinking. And we keep it's very high quality of water to drink because we are keep treating them all the time. So that's what we do.
Thank you.
Mark?
Great presentation. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Very educational. How much water is desalinated daily in Israel? And I've heard about a project to divert water to the Dead Sea. And I was just wondering if JNF is doing that as well.
Great questions. The amount I can check in a second. I don't know the amount of cubic water. I just know that all the water that we're using for houses are coming from desalination facilities. We are not using anything from nature right now, from the Kinneret and groundwater. But I can check it. We have 5 facilities, so each one of them is creating different amounts of water. By the way, in California, in San Diego, there's the biggest desalination facility in the west side of the earth, and it's also an Israeli company that built it. Israeli company that also operates in Ashkelon in Israel. And for your second question, and the Dead Sea is a problem. Fortunately, we had enough rain in the last 2 years, so the water level is still the same. But JNF is helping Israel. Actually, we have a plan. We have 2 plans, and once we have government, I hope in Israel, because we don't like to have government for too long in Israel. So they have to decide to go on with one of the plans, either to bring it from the Mediterranean Sea, or the second idea was to bring it from the south of Israel. And then JNF is involved in creating those desalination facilities in Acaba in Jordan. And the idea is to create a facility that will move water up, and Jordan will enjoy it. The farmers in the Jordanian side will enjoy it, but also the water will go all the way to the Dead Sea and maintain what we have there, because it's something that is in very high risk to vanish in I don't know 50 or 60 or 80 years, but JNF is also involved in reducing the independence of water that can use for the Dead Sea by creating the reservoirs all over Israel. We already built 250 of those. We need to build 60 more. We have a very precise plan. We know that in Israel will be 60 million people in 2050, and by then we need to create almost 60 reservoirs more to maintain the level of independence that we have now with food and agriculture.
I think we have time for one more question. Julie?
Hi. Thank you so much. This is a great program. And one of the reasons I tuned in for this program is because my son is very, very interested, like many college students, in saving the world through environmental means. And so I was really both excited, but also moved to hear about all these programs that I knew nothing about. Two questions. Number one, you're in the United States now, in California, and I just saw something on the news the other night, and people are drinking water that had been, reused. That was kind of the extreme to drink it. But I was thinking about the work that you're doing. Are you working then with the United States government now as part of the Build Back Better? Is there some main thrust that for information to flow from Israel to the United States, particularly for building our infrastructure in the United States with regard to all these components? That's question A. And question B, is there perhaps in the works some kind of program, or maybe it exists, between the IDF and the JNF to have an equivalent 2 to 3 year program whereby Jews in the diaspora, young people in particular, can go do, quote, service 2 to 3 years and learn all these techniques and then be ambassadors in addition to what you're doing with those particular, other countries internationally?
Okay, so first, your first question, there's definitely work with US and specific. I know that with California, we had signed a working agreement a few years ago. Many experts from the US visited before the corona in 2019 in Israel, and there's a lot of knowledge being shared with the US and with California about water. And that's why I'm optimistic that we'll see a change in the next few years, because everyone realized that we have to do that, and of course the US is our friend, our best friend in the world. So a lot of knowledge is being shared, and a lot of experts are working in those two countries together. I didn't quite understand the second question about the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. You mean?
Yes.
So,
yes, because the issue of national service is embedded, and the issue, of course, is that you also have these other programs through JNF that are affecting in the way that you can be ambassadors to the world, right? But there's really, I don't know that there exists yet a program whereby, for example, instead of just a student saying, "Oh, I'll spend a semester in Israel,"
so I can jump in and help respond to that.
Okay.
There are different programs. There's an umbrella organization, Masa, which has different programs, and students can choose, and whether it's a gap year or a postgraduate program, to be involved. Kibbutz Lotan, which is in the Arava, has an incredible program where there are internships, and it's part of, they're in that Arava region that Orin was just talking about.
Okay.
One of two reform kibbutzim, the other one being Gahel. And but Lotan in particular is their industry is an eco-industry, and the kibbutz itself is very, very it's designed environmentally, and they do ecotourism as well. But they're also involved in these partnerships, and some of the ones that we saw through the Arava Institute that they're involved with as well. So there are these programs that do exist.
I'd like to add.
I want to be sensitive to the time.
I'd like to add just one more thought to build on that, if I might.
Yeah. Okay.
Very
Marla.
quickly. There is also, JNF has a joint institute with Arizona University and the Arava Institute, where they are doing research on water, food sustainability, and the research out of that will come back to the US, and it will particularly be directed toward communities in Africa. And the program on Lotan is the Center for Creative Ecology.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, you get the last word and to close the program.
I just wanted to thank Orin so much for taking part in the program. You've really taught us a lot, and you've done exactly what we talked about, and I'm just so happy. So thank you very much, and thank you, JNF. I know more about JNF than I did before too. Thanks again, and I hope we'll see you sometime.
Hope to see you all in Israel. Come to see what we talked about.
Okay.
Very easy.
Thank you.
Come with us.
Araba. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Marlene. Thank you, Orin.
Our
Thank you, Alan.
Great day.
Thank you.